They were just hungry. Kids to her. Now they're billionaires with a promise to keep. The lady who was working behind the counter could only hear the growl of empty bellies, despite the fact that the chrome diner stools creaked beneath the weight of dreams. The town of Rustwood was not one that fostered its residents' aspirations. Rather, it sucked them dry and spat forth rust flakes. But in her small sanctuary, which she called Mabel's Nook, which was a deliberately cheery name for a town that was hanging to the verge of oblivion, 3 emaciated children found more than simply protection from the cold wind that was blowing off the abandoned steel mills. Mabel Vance was located by them. In Rustwood's eyes, they were nothing more than the shadows of Henderson Street. Anya Petrova, whose fingers were perpetually stained with charcoal or cheap paint, sketched impossible dresses on napkins while her mother worked double shifts cleaning offices, and Darius Riss Carter, whose sharp eyes missed nothing, already in the process of calculating angles and hustles while scavenging scrap metal. Leo Link Linwood, who was perpetually hunched over salvaged circuit boards, had eyes that reflected the cold glow of screens that others discarded. That is what Mabel referred to as her strays, hungry children with eyes that seemed to be haunted and futures that were as flimsy as the soup that she sometimes stretched with more noodles. A sentimental person, Mabel was not. She exemplified the concept of practical compassion. The aroma of her restaurant was reminiscent of decades of grease, robust coffee, and a hint of despondency. After Link's foster placement was unsuccessful, she did not inquire about the situation. Rather, she just handed him a plate of eggs and hash browns and pointed to the little storage room that had been converted into an office. She said that he may stay there just for a few nights, mind you. Following the ridicule that Anya's designs received at school, Mabel hung the most impressive one, which was a remarkably lovely gown made of coffee filters that had been sewn together in a frame and displayed it next to the specials board. Riss was discovered attempting to borrow copper wire, and it was Mabel who marched down to the owner of the salvage yard, paid for the wire with a week's worth of paltry tips, and then put Riss to work really earning it by replacing the neon sign that was always flickering at the restaurant. She did not deliver lectures. Rather, she served them with a slice of pie. As she watched him devour a burger while debugging a laptop that had been rescued, she would comment, "The first step is to clean the plates before you clean the code. The strength of a solid seam extends beyond the cloth, Anya. Holds dignity," she would mutter as she demonstrated how to repair a uniform that had been damaged. "Riss, you need to see beyond the junk." As they were repairing the leaking roof of the restaurant, she suggested that they have a look at the structure beneath. Rather than seeing their potential as an unrealized promise for the future, she saw it as a raw, ravenous energy that required both direction and nourishment. The turning point was not a pivotal moment. Rather, it was a moment of profound silence. The notification from the bank came. 6 months behind schedule was Mabel's Nook, which was the last of the warm lights on a dismal street. When the children, who were now teens and tasting the sour flavor of defeat on their refuge, discovered her late one night, she was holding her head in her hands and the notice was shaking on the broken Formica counter. Using a tone that was more abrasive than normal, Riss remarked, "We are not going to allow this to take place, Mabel." Anya took hold of Mabel's hand, which was a work-worn one. Link just stood there and gazed at the message, his thoughts already racing faster than any fan that had been saved. Mabel made 2 attempts to wave them away. "Remember, this is not your war, kids. It has been a successful run." Anya spoke with ferocity. "It is our fight," eyes welling up with tears. "You gave us everything." Once Link did speak, his voice was soft yet resonant in the restaurant, which was otherwise silent. "You spotted us while we were unaware of our presence. We are not going to allow you to vanish." On the counter, he put his hand in a flat position. A commitment. "When we finally succeed, when we really succeed, we will return. This is something that we fix. We put an end to all of this." The hand of Riss was slapped on top of the hand of Link. Hers was added by Anya. There were 3 hands, each of which was damaged, soiled, and shaking, put on top of the notice of foreclosure. The tears that had been slipping Mabel's pragmatic determination eventually came out, and she laid her weathered hand on top. She murmured, "You crazy kids," with a brittle grin that seemed to burst through the surface. "Just promise you'll eat something proper when you're rich." 2 decades later, Rustwood had not seen significant changes, simply more rusty and grayer. The obstinate remnant that was Mabel's Nook was still there, despite the fact that the neon Nook had had a long time to go dark. The counter was still polished, and the coffee was still good, despite the fact that Mabel, who was now approaching 80, moved more slowly. The message was now framed and hung next to Anya's design of a garment made out of coffee filters. It was a memorial that was both beautiful and sad. The noise was so strange that it caused the coffee cups that were not matched to shake. Not 1, but 3 hypercars, sleek creatures in matte black, electrifying blue, and deep green, came to a halt outside the dirty restaurant windows. They purred to a stop. Rustwood became frozen. Link Linwood, the founder of Chainlink Systems, whose quantum encryption protocols underpinned half of the global net, Anya Petrova, whose Petrova Collective had revolutionized sustainable luxury fashion, dressing stars and royalty, and Darius Carter, whose Carter Urban Region had reshaped skylines across 3 continents. All of these individuals were out and about wearing clothing that was worth more than the entire block. They gave off the impression of being messengers from another world. On the other hand, as they opened the door of the cafe and heard the bell ringing out its loud, tinny song, they realized that they were not millionaires. They had returned to their childhood, their eyes looking for Mabel. Her back was turned while she wiped the counter, and she was there. A single truck driver was standing at the end of the counter, and she heard him let out a gasp. She turned her head slowly. There was a pulse of stillness that lingered in the air, and it was thicker than her renowned meatloaf gravy. Her face was overwhelmed with recognition, which was both harsh and delicious, and it erased decades of fatigue. "You've been waiting for far too long," she said, a recognizable glint appearing in her eyes. "This booth is free. Are you hungry?" Suddenly, it was only Link, Anya, and Riss who were back at the counter that had rescued them. They rushed her, laughing, sobbing, and shouting over each other. The tech titan, the fashion star, and the real estate billionaire were all talking over each other. Double hash browns for Link, blueberry pancakes for Anya, and the largest burger for Riss were the items that they ordered as per their customary routine. They did not discuss stock prices or acquisitions. Rather, they discussed the time when Riss blew the fuse at the restaurant while attempting to construct a potato cannon, how Anya created Mabel a horrifically brilliant apron that she still secretly wore, and how Link once unintentionally wired the town's traffic lights via the cafe's antiquated toaster. At last, Riss brought a sleek titanium case over the counter to his customers. No money was found inside. The documents included architectural renderings, designs for the development, and a deed. "Mabel," Anya murmured, her voice high and resonant, "we didn't just come back for the Nook." To activate the holographic display that was emanating from his watch, Link tapped it. "We will be purchasing the block, every single thing. It is time for Carter Regan to rebuild. Housing that is environmentally friendly. A technology cluster that is centered on the regeneration of the Rust Belt and is anchored by a chain-link incubator." Riss wore a smile. "What about smack dab in the middle? The Nook of Mabel." It was restored, developed further. The same counter, the same stools, and the same you. Upstairs, however, there is a cutting-edge culinary school that is named after a woman who taught us that feeding others is about more than simply the food that you serve. Mabel gazed intently at the glistening pictures, which depicted a bustling and contemporary complex that was wrapped around her tiny cafe. Tears made their way through the fine dust that was on her cheeks one by one. You crazy kids," she exhaled, repeating the words she had said so long ago. You remembered the promise? A faint voice replied, We remember the hunger, Mabel, as Link spoke. The famine that you filled. Not only in our stomachs, she said. You saw the structure underneath the scrap, Riss said in response. And stitched more than just fabric, Anya said, feeling the coffee filter outfit that was framed. They did not break their pledge, the millionaires. However, it wasn't just about rescuing a cafeteria patron, reweaving the fabric of a community that had been forgotten with the strands of thankfulness that Mabel had woven many years before, was the goal of this endeavor. Not only were they not paying back a loan, but they were also passing on the profit, a future built on the unshakable foundation of a simple, powerful truth. Sometimes the most world-changing investments aren't made on Wall Street, but rather across a Formica counter, paid for in hash browns and unwavering belief. The chrome stools in the newly restored Mabel's Nook would soon groan again, not just under the weight of dreams, but under the weight of a future built on the foundation of a simple truth. The hungry children had come back, not just to provide the lady who had provided them with food, but also to provide nourishment to the very ground where generosity had taken root.